HBO's House of the Dragon is a masterpiece, and Amazon's Rings of Power is a masterpiece of shit. I'm not saying you're wrong if you thought that Rings of Power was a gratifying depiction of the lore of Middle-earth. I just simply want to know what you're smoking and how I can get some. There were moments in Rings of Power where I felt myself physically disassociating, like I was being exposed to some sort of trauma, because let's be honest, I was. On the other hand, House of the Dragon was so well cast, written, and acted that every word being spoken drew my attention. The main character of Rings of Power, Galadriel, was so terribly cast that any scene with her in it was truly difficult to enjoy. House of the Dragon expands on characters from the source, while Rings of Power changes and ruins an already rich, amazing source, the works of Tolkien. House of the Dragon isn't free of having its issues as well, most notably all the time skips, but when you read the source, the book, Fire and Blood, you understand why it was done. The source is merely historical accounts of events with very little detail on how the events came to be or even the nature of the events. And trust me, once you get to the end, you'll wish there was more time skips. Dialogue is virtually inexistent in the book. You don't see much of it at all, so the showrunners had a lot to write. But what they didn't do is they didn't mess with the source material. The characters, the nature of the characters. They did make small changes here and there, but they didn't bastardize the source material in the same manner that Rings of Power did. The showrunners of House of the Dragon had the benefit of working with the artist of the source, because he's still alive, and Tolkien is not. So although the time skips feel like the story is being rushed, I'm glad the showrunners didn't decide to make their own show entirely and stayed true to the source. Now let's talk about characters. The characters in Rings of Power are very one-dimensional, while the characters of House of the Dragon are morally gray, with each having a personality entirely unique from one another. Some characters are also incredibly unpredictable. Unexpected thrills are something House of the Dragon has that Rings of Power doesn't even contain. So I would keep that in mind if you're looking for a story that is going to shock you at times. House of the Dragon does have its issues, as some characters' responses and choices don't really seem feasible for their personality. However, these moments are few and far between. Characters in House of the Dragon also feel much more lifelike, as they have strange traits and preferences, such as Larys' love for feet. Yeah, that was weird. One thing I did enjoy about Rings of Power was the scenes with Elrond and Durin. Their acting and chemistry was a true refreshment for all the scenes with Galadriel's boring ass. The plotline with Bronwyn and Arondir, aka Elven Tiger Woods, was a bore as well. The plotline between the Harfoot and what we believe to be Gandalf was also just underwhelming. In fact, the only plotline I really enjoyed at all was the plotline between Adar and the orcs. There was some really great special effects makeup there, and the battle scenes were pretty fascinating as well. It's time to talk about cinematography. The bright, colorful cinematography and color grading of Rings of Power was a stark contrast to House of the Dragon's often dull, dark visual tone. Both shows were shot incredibly well and were appropriately color graded for what they were trying to pull off. They both got an A+ there. Now let's talk about sound mixing. Sound mixing and music scores were another key difference between both the shows. The music choices and scoring was overpowering in Rings of Power, possibly in an attempt to mask the bad acting and writing. It was the only show I've ever watched in English that I've had to use subtitles for. On the other hand, House of the Dragon often used silence as a tool and drew the viewer in more than hearing a brass section blaring over a regular conversation, such as they did in Rings of Power. The writing choices, characters, cinematography, and soundtrack made Rings of Power feel very Disney-esque. I am in no way saying anything made by Disney or produced by Disney is bad at all, but what I mean is Rings of Power didn't feel like a work of art, but it rather felt like a product, seeking to leech from a franchise. In conclusion, House of the Dragon takes the W here. I still thought that Rings of Power was watchable, however, House of the Dragon was done exceptionally well. I give House of the Dragon an 8.5 out of 10, and I give Rings of Power a 5.675 out of 10. And if you disagree, feel free to leave a comment so I could tell you how you're wrong. Thanks for watching, guys.